born through airborne. In fact, it's not necessarily going to be that someone has to sneeze or cough before you get it. It means that it's now airborne, but that has yet is yet to be proved as we get on, Kingsley, because now, as it is, there's no sound proof on that, even if the WHO has made such comment.
Well, that's right. But the information is out there already that it may very well be airborne, and this, of course, has provoked palpable fears, not just in Nigeria but elsewhere around the world. And for us in Nigeria, we have seen a continuing rise in confirmed cases of coronavirus across the country since the index case was first announced on the 27th of February this year.
And that's right, Kingsley, and let's check out the figures as at March 27, a month after the first case. You mentioned 10 states in the nation were announced to have had clinically confirmed cases, 3 persons recovered, and just 1 death was reported. But today, 4 months into the situation, the confirmed COVID-19 cases heightened in the thousands and deaths of to some hundreds.
Well, Nigeria now has well over 34,000 confirmed cases, and the figures are pushing nearer 35,000. And the question, of course, would be what has been the impact of the advocacy, response capacity, and even the capabilities of both the federal government and the state governments in seeking to address the pandemic.
Now, what is the experience at this moment is for us to understand that, despite the efforts being committed by states and the federal government, is also worthy of note at this point to not to live in denial, because some persons have been thinking that COVID-19 is a ruse, but now it's very clear and evident that it is here with us, and of course it is global. So that calls for some level of attitudinal change in trying to live the life of COVID-19 as it is being done globally.
That's right, Kirian. Now, whether there's denial or not, it is now established that all states of the Nigerian Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, now have coronavirus. And we also, of course, know that both the federal and state governments have been setting up facilities while upgrading others in order to boost their response to the fight against COVID-19. But the numbers continue to rise.
And a pertinent question to ask is at what levels are the states in the fight of COVID-19 with respect to providing the infrastructure and facilities? And of course, we know that there's a cross-infections which has continued here and there. And of course, with the next new pronouncement on the virus transmission being airborne, that adds to the injury. Because I'm still concerned about this being airborne. But when a disease is airborne, that means if you're moving, you could just get it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just like a chemical weapon, if it's dropped here in Nigeria, for instance, someone could inhale it from any part of the country.
Yeah, that's right. That makes it more interesting and even more potentially worrisome because the advice is wear a face mask when you are in public places. But when you are there in your private homes or not in a public place, what happens? And if the virus is airborne, because you can't stop the air or clasp the air with your hands. So that's a very interesting scenario that, of course, the experts will be taking a look at. We must also indicate that coronavirus has been such a slippery virus to contend with, whether in terms of the cure or in terms of treatment or even in terms of a vaccine or just understanding the general behavior of the virus itself. Well, of course, this is one in our series of reports from the states. We have covered as many states of the Federation as possible, and today will not be an exception as we try to interrogate what's happening in the states that we have chosen to focus on this morning. It's on that note we'd like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. And
I am Kirian Umaya. There's also concern here, Kingsley, here that the rate at which the COVID-19 is rising in many states is explosive, if you ask me, because on a daily basis there's this increase in the number of cases that we have in states. And coping with that number is a huge responsibility of the states and, of course, the federal government. So many thanks to you for joining us this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kirian Umaya. We'll also be reaching you with the complimentary segment of the program. But for now, we'll bring you the News Beat with Musbao Dan Wahab.
All right, good morning, Kieran and Kingsley. It's interesting, that topic you have there, and to look at the situation across the state. But now let's bring you the news beat. The Federal Executive Council has approved the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper for 2021-2023. The document projects 12.66 trillion naira as budget size for the year 2021 fiscal year. Minister of State for Finance, Budget and National Planning announced this while briefing newsmen after the council's meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari.
That we made based on these following parameters. Oil price benchmark of $40 per barrel. Oil production at 1.86 million barrels per day. An exchange rate regime of 360 naira per dollar. It is projected that in 2021 might have a budget size of about 12.66 trillion.
Job hunting in Nigeria is faced with a complex web of challenges ranging from non-availability of openings to job racketeering. But most worrisome is that those qualified are sometimes denied by age limitation, a hurdle the Senate is trying to dismantle. The legislators are calling on the federal government to abolish age limitation as a criteria in recruitment.
You find that somebody will finish his university at the age of 25. Then it will take him 10 to 15 years to get employment. For example, if the age limit is 23, we must now add the 13 or 14 years of embargo on employment to the age already earmarked for employment.
This is a very good motion, and urging the Federal Ministry of Labour and Productivity to swing into action immediately.
This might not be the best of times for the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. Allegations directed at the way and manner its finances were managed have caused both the executive and the legislature to institute investigations on activities of the commission. National Assembly correspondent report that the House of Representatives has commenced an investigative hearing on the NDDC. The Federal High Court has sentenced a former executive director of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, Captain Ezekiel Bala Agaba, to 7 years in prison for laundering 1.5 billion naira. Justice Ibrahim Buba, who gave a judgment, held that the prosecution, EFCC, was able to convince the court that the accused conspired with the former Director General to commit the offense. Now, to complement federal government's policies on agriculture, the Future Assured initiative of Nigeria's First Lady, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, has empowered 150 irrigation farmers with pumping machines in Katsina State preparatory to next year's dry season farming. Correspondents report that another set of 100 youth were given clippers to boost their saloon businesses.
The success and bedrock of every economy also relies on self-employment, small and medium-scale enterprises.
Promise her that we are not going to sell it. We are very, very grateful.
Assuring everybody that this kind of gesture is going to be very effective for our farming system.
And elsewhere, the First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, has received the donation of personal protective equipment from the First Lady of the People's Republic of China, Professor Peng Liyuan, as part of China's support of fighting COVID-19 in Nigeria. The Minister Counselor of the Chinese Embassy in Nigeria, Zhao Yong, on behalf of the First Lady of China, presented the items to the representative of the First Lady and Senior Special Assistant to the President on Administration and Women Affairs, Hajo Sani.
Today's donation is a token of friendship towards the Nigerian people, particularly the Nigerian mothers, children, and the young people. China and Nigeria are strategic partners. China will continue to support Nigeria's fight against COVID-19.
The First Lady of China pledged and promised to do everything possible to support African First Lady in their fight against HIV and AIDS. With the emerging issue of COVID-19, she thought it very, very important for her to also look around to her sisters in Africa to extend her support.
Health experts in the diaspora under the aegis of Nigerian Association of Pharmacists and Pharmaceutical Scientists in the Americas have urged the federal government to leverage on the coronavirus pandemic to ramp up indigenous production of medical and pharmaceutical products. This was while handing over critical diagnostic and personal protective equipment to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, in Abuja.
NAPSCA is committed to partnering with NCDC and the government of Nigeria to further explore opportunities of promoting indigenous production of pharmaceuticals and then medical products.
COVID-19 shows that no matter what, home is home. No matter where you go to, this is home. We urge others to do the same thing.
Our role is to manage it and make sure it gets to the people that will need.
Report from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, says 643 new cases of COVID-19 have been reported in the country, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 34,259. The 643 new cases recorded from 14 states, and the FCT shows Lagos has 230, Oyo 69, FCT 51, Edo 43, Osun 35, Rivers 30, Ebonyi 30, Kaduna 23, Ogun 27, Ondo reported 23 new cases each. Others are Plateau with 20 cases, Benue 17, Enugu 16, Imo has 10, and Delta 6. Lagos remains top on the number of cases per state chart in Nigeria with 12,941 cases. The FCT comes next with 2,738 cases, while Oyo is third with 1,951 new cases. There are now 13,999 discharged patients with 760 deaths on record. And that concludes the news highlights. Good morning, Nigeria, and COVID-19 situation report in state will continue with Kingsley and Kirian after this break. I'm Musbat and Wahab. Good morning.
Main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. Nigerians, let us take responsibility. Stay healthy, stay safe, and curb the spread of the virus. Take responsibility. The coronavirus spreads from one person to another. Let us avoid crowd gathering of any kind for any reason. Take responsibility. Avoid traveling from one state to another during these lockdown restrictions. Obey all the rules that are put in place. Take responsibility. Stop spreading fake news and unverified reports about the coronavirus. There is no known cure for COVID-19. Take responsibility. Observe all the measures that can help stop the spread of the virus. Together, we can do this, but only if we take responsibility. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
And now let's go business. Nigeria ranked top in Africa in the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, gross domestic product GDP figures. Chimobi Waternaji has more on business news.
Nigeria has ranked top in Africa with $455.82 million in the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries gross domestic product figures. Nigeria's leadership position in the OPEC GDP ranking is contained in the latest report in the 2019 edition of the Annual Statistical Bulletin, ASB, of OPEC. Nigeria placed second to Saudi Arabia, which led the pack among the 13 member OPEC countries with a $792.967 million GDP figure. Algeria came next to Nigeria in Africa with $172.551 million GDP figure, followed by Angola, Gabon, and Congo. The report disclosed that total world crude oil production declined in 2019 by 0.56 million barrels per day, or 0.7%. In the meantime, the Central Bank of Nigeria this week added maize to items banned to access forex for importation. In a notice to dealers, the Apex Bank said the move was to further boost local production, stimulate rapid economic recovery, as well as safeguard livelihoods and jobs. What are the impact of these developments to the agricultural sector of Nigeria's economy?
This importation of maize will cause many problems, and it will discourage the farmers to go back to farm again.
The permit that they have requested for is not necessarily we grant permit for importation of agricultural products. But once they are genetically modified, somebody must file an application to the agency that we want to import genetically modified organisms.
And now, here is a quick look at the closing figures at the floor of the capital market. With business news, I'm Chimobi Waternaji. Many thanks, Chimobi Watanaji, for the business package. Coming up next is newspaper review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Tebi, is already here with us in the studio. Bayo, good to have you.
Good morning, Kirian. Thank you. Good morning, Kinsley.
Right, Bayo, good to see you.
All right, let's begin with the Nation newspaper. Above the nameplate, Zulum's 1 billion naira interest-free loans launched. That Zulum is actually the governor of Zamfara State. And it said small businesses targeted. It's on page 26. Buhari's anti-graft war must go on, says Freed Magu, as on page 25, with a rider 12 AFCC chiefs suspended. Martins replaces Igalo at Shenhua. FAN hits Yari flood. Makudi residents seek help. Those stories on page 29, just on page 29, and of course that of FAN is on page 6. Now, below the nameplate, we have other stories. So, of course, the lead story. But before that, let's take this. Edo 2020, with riders there, Obaseki PDP is struggling for relevance, says APC. AA, LP, ADC substitute candidates. And then PDP denies attacking Ize Iyamu's running mate. The stories can be captured, or were captured actually on page 6. Now, the lead story this morning, federal government insists pupils won't sit for August WASC. All right, Ebony pupils to resume next month. Southeast states to reopen schools for exams. All right, now the photo story here is that of the young lady that died. My wonderful, brilliant, grieving dad laments young pilot's death. My girl, wonderful, brilliant, grieving dad laments young pilot's death. The first female Nigerian Air Force combat helicopter fighter, flying officer Tulube Arotile, who died in an accident in Kaduna. It's a very sad one. Now, below that, we have a ship owner seek government intervention in securing anchorage area dispute. All right. Now, at the bottom of the nation, National Assembly clerk rejects sack. It's on page 5. Suit seeking Uzodima's removal for Monday. That's on page 25. Kinsley.
All right, Kieran, the story of Tolulokwa is also on the front page of the Punch newspaper above the name flag. You have it there. It says, I spoke with Tolulokwa at 1 p.m., but at 5 p.m., I was told she was in the mortuary. That's according to the father of Nigeria's first female combat helicopter pilot. Details of that story can be found on page 2. I spoke with Tolulokwe at 1 p.m., but at 5 p.m., I was told she was in the mortuary. Beside that, 774,000 jobs. Senate holds closed session. The National Assembly to meet Buhari. Details on page 7. And the late story is on WASC resumption and pupils resumption. Southwest states Ebonyi and Cross River on collision course with federal government. And there are 3 riders to that. Southwest states ready for WASC, proposed August 3rd for SS3 resumption. It's not safe for schools to resume yet, federal government insists. And WAC consulting other West African countries on WASC date. That's according to the minister. Now, again, Rufai, monarchs and others meet on southern Kaduna killings. You see the photograph there from some of the attendees at the meeting. I didn't sexually harass ex-NDDC managing director. This is according to Akpabio. Godswill Akpabio is the honorable minister in charge of Niger Delta Affairs. I didn't sexually harass ex-NDDC managing director because there was a report earlier about the former NDDC managing director claiming that she slapped Akpabio when he tried to sexually harass her. The details of the slap were not disclosed in the story anyway. Now, 15 officials behind 5.7 billion naira missing pension fund. That's in Niger. Details on page 12. UK frustrated air peace attempt to evacuate Nigerians. That's according to Onyema, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Police release Magu. Buhari suspends 12 EFCC directors. Page 9. Gunmen kidnap NIS official, that's Immigration Service official, his wife, and kill sister-in-law in Nasarawa State. That's on page 8. All of this took place in Akwanga, and the persons are related to former Information Minister Tabaran Maku. Wadume, that's the kicker. Court admits Taraba policeman's confession as exhibit. That's page 12. Bayo.
Well, let's start with the sad note on the death of Tululope Arutile. President Muhammadu Buhari and Hajia Aisha have both expressed agony over the death of Nigeria's first combat helicopter pilot. The president acknowledged her outstanding contributions in the war against terrorism, banditry, as well as contributing to eliminating criminality through her combat missions. The president has condoled the family of the 24-year-old combat pilot, as well as the people and government of Kogi State. The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, has condoled the family and also has lamented that she will be missed. She was inadvertently hit by a reversing vehicle of her former classmate. They were attended Nigeria Air Force secondary schools together. So when she saw her, she called her attention and wanted to greet her. Unfortunately, she suffered severe head injury, so much so that the father spoke with her at 1 p.m., but by 5 p.m., she was already in the mortuary. Hajia Aisha Buhari has described her as an intelligent young woman who is in fact a huge potential and also represents the potentials of Nigerian women and our Nigerian youths.
There's no doubt, Bayo, that that's a very huge loss, you know, not just to Nigeria, but to the Air Force, you know, authority, you know, who has produced such a person, such talent and gift, right? And you know, to have a combat helicopter a pilot is not an easy one. It's not an easy one because you may pass the class works, but when it comes to the practicals, you know, it will be very difficult. But for her to do all that and sail through, I mean, it's a huge development on her own part. Today we have lost her. It's really you know, touch and
there
painful.
were two of them that were winged last October. One fighter pilot and had a helicopter combat pilot. And she has run several sorties and missions, particularly from the base Operation Yaki had a base in Mina, Niger State. It's a very sad development.
Yeah, very, very sad. It's a specialized field, actually, for military personnel. And to have lost her in the circumstance that it all happened, it's pretty sad. I mean, it's just 24 years. It would have been 25 in December.
When I saw start caught in her brain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once I saw those additional details, you have cold sweat pouring out of your body almost instantly. Yeah, but she could have been our daughter, and so our hearts go out to the family, and indeed to the Nigerian Air Force. This is a huge loss. Just to say, look at how much it costs to train an officer of that nature, and then to have lost her in a car crash, which was accidental, as it were. It's pretty sad. It's a very sad moment for the Nigerian Air Force. We urge them to take heart, and the family too to also take heart.
And a lot of her friends that did that, I wonder what will be her situation at this moment.
Absolutely.
You know, because
she will feel so
throughout her life. She will feel so bad.
Currently, she has been detained.
Exactly, but that will stick with her for life. You know, trying to reverse to come and greet your friend. I mean, it's a
what was supposed to be a joyous moment,
has now
turned into mourning.
Yes,
it's pretty sad. May her soul rest in peace. May her soul rest in
Kingsley, you
peace.
turned out to be a prophet. You recall the other day when we were talking about the Honorable Minister of Aviation launching the protocol for opening of the airport for air travel, domestic flights. And you said that the challenge is that our VIPs will be the ones that will float it. Yesterday, the Federal Airports Authority expressed considerable worry that the Alhaji Abdulaziz Yari, former governor of Zamfara State, had refused to have his luggage decontaminated, and in fact, he is alleged to have pushed away the officer, environmental officer, who was trying to do that at the airport. The Federal Airports Authority has expressed serious concerns and worry about that the protocol are put there for public health purposes, and there is no exemption for anybody. And they expressed their worry and recall that they are called on the Honorable Minister for Aviation to also help the situation whereby officers who are there doing their legitimate duty will not be inadvertently assaulted because they are carrying out their duty.
Well, if I'm the officer in charge, I'll make sure he doesn't board any plane. He wouldn't board. He wouldn't board. Exactly. I mean, if you're a VIP and you want to join a public air transport, you obey the protocol. If not, you go and get your own private jet and fly. Because, in fact, if such continues, then where are we going? It means that we are becoming a lawless nation. If someone who's been a governor of a state, who knows what the law says, will come and now openly to say, look, I'm a VIP, you don't touch me or decontaminate my luggage, then it's a high level of indiscipline, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Kieran, I'm with you on this. And Bayo, as you rightly observed, we had mentioned that the breaches by the Nigerian big men and women will be the major challenge at the airports. Now, the former governor says it's a VIP. The next thing you would hear will be the security men or the aides to such big men when they arrive at the airports, especially when they are armed, and you try to make them observe the protocols. The next thing is, of course, they will roughen up those individuals. I think there should be one additional disappointment that we should express on this occasion. Why would FAN be expressing worries? Why would FAN be expressing worries? The report of that incident should go to the police, and then the police should take appropriate action. When you shove, you say you pushed away an environmental officer who was going to decontaminate the luggage, that is assault in law.
Exactly.
It's assault. It is not only when you slap somebody, or you can, well, of course, if you threaten to slap somebody, that's also assault. But when you actually slap, that's assault on battery. If you shove the person, you had no right to do that. And of course, you can say it's a misdemeanor, or the judge may have a lenient view and say subject the person to community service upon conviction and make him sweep the lounge, or be mopping the floor, at peak period, so that every passenger who's coming and going will see the individual.
I think the Federal Airports Authority must put their feet down. Anybody who refuses to subject him or herself to the protocol should not be allowed to travel. It's as simple as that.
If you are a VIP, congratulations. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, is a VIP, had coronavirus.
And he went to public hospital.
Absolutely.
Coronavirus respects no VIP.
So when you don't obey the laws or the rules this way, how would you expect those who are lower the wrong to also respect the rules?
Exactly.
Well, the other matter of that Kieran you read earlier on was the National Assembly Service Commission has directed that all officers who have spent 35 years in the service of the National Assembly or who have reached the age of 60 should proceed on retirement. This was a circular issued by the executive chairman of the National Assembly Service Commission, Ahmed Amski. However, the revised condition of service had generated some controversy. It will be recalled that a couple of weeks ago, the head of service of the Federation had advised that the salary structure for the members of the National Assembly, which was different from the civil service, was illegal. She accordingly also advised that the status of staff of the National Assembly is similar and the same with civil servants of the Federation, and the retiring age is 35 years in service or 60 years of age, whichever comes first. But the clerk of the National Assembly has replied in a memo, advising all members of staff that are affected by the pronouncement, the circular by the chairman of the National Assembly Service Commission, to disregard that circular. He says that the 8th National Assembly had approved the condition of service of the National Assembly. There is a letter that was purportedly written by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He has renounced authorship of that letter. However, the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria, which initiated all this, says that the current Senate President, while acting as majority leader in the 8th National Assembly, and the current Speaker, who was also majority leader in the House of Representatives, both proposed that condition of service and presented it when it was passed as a resolution. So these are the nuances coming from it.
Very quickly. You know, sometimes you see that in Nigeria, every position becomes a chieftaincy title. To say you must hold on to it, you know, until something happens.
There would have been no difference.
Your conditions of service cannot diverge from the principal law from which you derive the authority to make those conditions of service. The head of civil service of the Federation already spoke about the federal civil service rules, which govern all of that. That's one leg. Second leg, there are also the constitutional provisions. You are a public servant in the first instance. So you cannot now make conditions of service or seek to benefit from conditions of service that override the provisions of the principal law or the frontiers or rigor of the country.
Now,
that's one leg.
Is the National Assembly existing in are they on their own? Are they operating on their own?
Good question.
No, there's a law. There's a law
that's right.
Guiding civil service in Nigeria. So because you work at the National Assembly does not make you a super civil servant. So if you get 60 to 60 years, you will not retire because there is a provision made by the National Assembly.
Under your conditions of service. And just this last point, so that you can take the editorial. Look, the National Assembly Service Commission issues a directive and the clerk says no, the staff affected should not obey it. The National Assembly Service Commission is your employer, so you are now giving directives to your employer. I mean, what makes your appointment statutorily flavored is because you are employed by the National Assembly Service Commission, and it has given you a directive. You are saying you are countering that directive. I don't know what.
No, I think it's, the entire thing is meaningless coming from the clerk. It's totally meaningless. Let's go to the editorial bio because of time. Deepening national unity through NAFEST. It's coming from my Sun newspaper. But at this point in time that we're talking about COVID-19, National Festival of Arts and Culture, I don't know, is it a forum, you know, that we could use to promote anything as at now because of the presence of COVID-19 all over the place?
Well, the editorial is happening on the fact that National Festival of Arts and Culture, which was introduced in 1970, soon after the Civil War, is an avenue that is, whose intention is to harness the diversity we have by way of culture as an instrument of national unity. Granted that the ongoing COVID-19 has brought everything or slowed down everything, the National Council of Arts and Culture was able to put in what they call a drive-in Arts of Culture last Sunday, and that was very attractive and people benefited from it. And the editorial is happening on the fact that the proposed National Festival of Arts of Culture, which is scheduled for Jos, Plateau State, should be seen as an avenue to take up the challenge of our diversity, which oftentimes becomes our Achilles heel and causes division rather than uniting us. And he's saying that we should use culture as a vehicle to purpose of national unity.
Well, that's not new, actually. You know, obviously there are so many festivals, you know, in this country, you know, that have been bringing cultures together. You know, some are competitive, some are just for, you know, purpose of festivity and what have you. So, of course, we were talking about that of 1977, you know, that brought Africans, you know, to Nigeria.
That's Festac. I was talking about
Festac, yes.
National Festival 1970, at the end of the National Civil War. The purpose was to bring everybody together for the purpose of national unity and reconciliation.
It's okay.
All right, well, that's it. Baya Tebe, we'd like to thank you for being around. Wet morning in the Federal Capital Territory.
Yes, it's the kind of rain that you find in Port Harcourt and Warri, and you say, okay, I'll wait until the rain ends. And it never ends for throughout the whole day.
It's around 2 a.m.
That's right.
Or thereabout, you know.
Amongst many people, we call it Ugiewekon. Ugiewekon.
That is the road that is go all day through.
No, well, yeah, that's it. Stops, it comes, it stops, it goes, it comes. You know, so it doesn't allow ghosts to browse. I'd like to thank you for being around.
Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. We're taking a short break now. When we return, situational reports with regard to COVID-19 from some selected states.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Everyone has always been faced with a moral question between what is right and what is wrong. Yet not everyone is ready to do the right thing. This is where we come in. We are Jais Bank, committed to making a difference by doing the right thing even if we stand alone. A place where transparency is an attitude and trust is a culture. A place where profit is shared and losses borne together. At Jais Bank, we support you to shape a better tomorrow, a partnership to birth your dreams. Jais Bank, for a better life.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
Inside my house again. This thing not the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take care of it. That's what I pay.
Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. Today, we are returning to the situation reports from the States, and as a prompt for that conversation, let's join Abdul Malik Adio for this background now.
The level of awareness is more compared to 2 months ago, where people find it difficult to accept that COVID-19 is actually real. But now they have seen people who have been discharged, people who have attained full recovery, those who have tested negative, and now people are coming to terms to the realization that COVID-19 is real.
Oyo State took an initiative in looking at the cases across the state. The state's large, and we instituted community testing across 10 facilities in the state, and that covers perhaps the length and breadth of the state. As we speak, Oyo State has tested well over 9,000 people, and within the next couple of days we should have gotten over 10,000, and with more tests, more people are found, and Oyo State is trying to make use of the data that we have to be able to tell what efforts we might have to put in terms of looking at the current protocols that we're having and see how best we'll be able to place the state on a better stead.
When the project started, I would say the attack on the coronavirus, we found out that the initial transmissions were around Wuse2 and Maitama, and those were the imported cases. And then the search was now, where has this virus gone to? And then what happened at that time was to follow the house helps of all those people who were living there. And that meant Mpape, Gishiri, Mabushi, Gariki village, Jahi, Jabi, Lube. And at the end of the day, we found out that the transmissions mostly were around Mabushi. In fact, a greater percentage of the community transmission was in Mabushi. And then the next place that had a very high rate of transmission was Gariki village. And then, of course, in that order, you had also Lube, and then you had Jahi, Jabi area.
We have 3 zones in Bauchi State, and we are now building their capacity so that they will be carried out community testing, and then community support group, and their risk communication also increased to be able to reach the community and inform them about coronavirus. It's very important. And we told the people that, and we enforced that no going into places like a supermarket without washing our hands, no entering without wearing face masks, no entering. The rule is now imposed in Bauchi State.
Breathlessness is one of the cardinal symptoms of COVID-19 disease. So when they are taken to hospitals, unless a hospital has a holding bay, which is what have been advised to happen in Abuja, that all the hospitals should have at least 2 or 3 beds as a holding bay. But that is what is now being arranged.
And now to discuss the topic this morning with us here in Abuja, we have Dr. Mohammed Sheka Balogu. Mohammed Balogu is, of course, the President Advisor in Nigeria Field of Epidemiology and Laboratory Program. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Also in Abuja studio is Dr. Saka Audu, Commissioner for Health, Kogi State. It's indeed nice to have you on this program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and then joining us from our Enugu Network Center is the Honorable Commissioner for Health in Ebonyi State, Dr. Daniel Umezurike. Dr. Umezurike, a pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me in this morning program.
Okay, and then also with us today and via Skype is the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu. Dr. Ihekwazu, pleasure to have you with us after such a long while. We know you've been very busy.
Hi, Jesse. Good morning, Nigerians.
So I'd like to congratulate you for all the job you've been doing across the nation. We've been moving from one state to the other, monitoring your men who are there in the field. Of course, as you know, these are the people who are in the front line of this battle. And now let us share some of your experiences, having gone around many states, and of course seeing what they have on ground in terms of facility, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of PPEs, and of course management of patients of coronavirus. So what is the picture that you intend to paint this morning with respect to that? So we can begin to have a feel of what is happening in many parts of the states. I know that even some states you didn't visit, you are getting a feeler, from your men who are in the field.
Yeah, thank you. It's been, we're now 5 months, depending on where you start counting, from the global picture, 6 months into this outbreak. And the key thing we've found in the States, as we've gone around, is even at the national level, when we started this response, everybody had the energy that you used to run a sprint, a 100-meter dash. So there was a lot of energy, and everybody was, on at least the states that really came to the party on top of trying to quickly escalate their ability to respond. But we are now at a stage where we realize that this is a marathon. And the skills that you need to run a sprint are different from what you need to run a marathon. And we need to prepare for that marathon and execute it differently. So it means that whatever we're doing, we really now have to plan on how we can sustain it for the next 12 months or maybe even more. So whether it's in terms of having rapid response teams or infection prevention and control, personal protective equipment, like you said, our hospital care facilities, our intensive care facilities, all the various aspects of the response. It's no longer enough just to bring in a few donations and to see what I can do now. All the commissioners, all the leaders across every state in Nigeria have to plan for the next 12 to 18 months. And that requires a different set of skills, resources, energy, planning, commitment, delivery that we have ever seen in this country. You know, previously, you would know when I've been on your show separately, talking about Lassa fever or yellow fever or monkeypox, but all these have been localized outbreaks in one part of the country or the other. This time, we're facing a national outbreak. In fact, it's a global pandemic of which Nigeria is only part of. So it means that from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, we have to provide every state in Nigeria a similar level of support, at least the states that are welcoming of our support. And so we have been trying to do this across the breadth of this country, which is extremely difficult. But the team has risen to the challenge. We have tried to support states with human resources, technical expertise, personal protective equipment. We almost have laboratory testing capabilities in almost every state in Nigeria. So our role as NCDC and the entire team of the Presidential Task Force is to continue ensuring that we can provide the states and Nigerians the support that they need to execute the marathon that COVID-19 is becoming. And so that's where we are currently in this transition phase and transiting the level of support we're able to give.
Well, Dr. Ehekwazu, thank you very much. You were among the WHO delegation that went to China earlier in the year, and I recall that upon your return, we had you, of course, via Skype on Good Morning Nigeria, and it's nearly 5 months now that we had index case, and you've been, of course, battling with this along with members of the Presidential Task Force and cooperative subnational entities. What has surprised you the most about either the spread or the fatalities of COVID-19, and what has also pleased you the most in terms of response?
So thank you very much. Yes, I very much remember that program and how we were trying to look into the future. Who would have thought that we're where we are today? Reflecting on that trip, which I've done a lot, is, you know, when I was in China with this team, something that struck me and that worried me about our country was the level of compliance I saw among people in China. You know, I was in China with the team for, I think it was 10 days, and throughout that 10 days, I honestly did not see a single person not wearing a mask. I didn't see anybody, whether it's on the streets, in the hotel, from a distance, everybody was wearing a mask. So there was a level of compliance that was achievable in China that I worried that if we had this here, we would not be able to achieve. And that has proven right, because people, it's just so difficult to get ourselves to understand the risk of a small virus that nobody can see and how dangerous it is. But I think over the last few weeks, we are slowly making progress. I hope that we don't need to see the level that we have seen in other countries for us to realize that this is indeed a very serious outbreak and we need to respond as a population. The second part is also something I saw, is the level of dedication and diligence that healthcare workers need to have in order to manage these cases. And I worried that our response architecture, both on the public health side and on the clinical care side, was not prepared for a big outbreak. Luckily, we've had a lot of cases, but we've not really had the scale that we feared would happen. My point here is that we still have an opportunity because we are not out of the woods. Every healthcare system should not only be able to provide for what its patients need now, but also what we will need if there was a big outbreak like this. So we have been ourselves from the federal government side trying to invest, but also supporting and asking every state to invest in intensive care capacity. It's not just about beds. We need to employ and train anesthetists and intensive care nurses, because really, people talk about ventilators as if a ventilator itself is going to save anyone. It's really the ability to use these oxygen concentrators, these ventilators, that are really going to save the critical people. And thirdly, is, you know, when we were talking previously on your show many times on why we all need to take health security seriously as a country, you know, people thought it was a hypothetical situation and this will never happen. And the states that really did a lot are states like Ebonyi, who's on your program, because they have had exposure to a lot of outbreaks in the past. So the state government itself had invested a lot in preparing, both in terms of its lab, its virology center, for the event that an outbreak like this happens. And that's really what we're encouraging every state in Nigeria to do. We are there to support, and we will continue. Our mandate is to support every state, but we really need every state on its own to, as the same way you think about roads, flyovers, schools, is the same way you have to think about health security, because if you don't, it's at some point going to grind the economy of your state to a halt. And you would have wished you made this investment many years ago. But the best time, I will end on this, Kingsley, the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. The next best time is today. So we must start investing in our health security. We are doing that at the federal level. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control is getting a lot of support in order so that we support the states. But really, every state in Nigeria has to take its destiny in its own hands, as well as every citizen of Nigeria has to contribute to the response by doing what you or he or she needs to do in order to prevent transmission across the country.
All right, Dr. Chikwe, thank you very much indeed for that opening remarks. As a matter of fact, Kingsley has touched most aspects of this conversation with respect to collaboration with the states and what the states ought to have done before now and what is supposed to be done now, right? So let's remain. Let's go to Dr. Daniel Umezurike, the Health Commissioner from Ebonyi State. He's in Enugu. Let's get to you. Dr. Ihekwazu mentioned clearly that Ebonyi actually rose to the occasion at the beginning and ensured that provisions were made in case of any outbreak in Ebonyi State. Ebonyi State also has been witnessing outbreaks in the past, so it is not new to that state. Hence, you made elaborate efforts initially to see how COVID-19 can be contained. Now, let us know what is currently existing in the state. We know Ebonyi status has risen, for some days now, and that you have recorded many more COVID-19 patients, even more than other parts of the eastern Nigeria. Now, let us know what is happening with respect to the provisions you have made, the infrastructure, the facilities, treatment, and what have you. Just bring us up to speed with what's happening in Ebonyi State with respect to COVID-19.
Good morning, Nigerians. My name is Dr. Umezurike Daniel, the Honorable Commissioner for Health, Ebonyi State. And my opening statement is to say that mankind is at war with this strange disease, COVID-19. And we are fighting an unknown enemy. And With respect to Ebonyi State, the situation report as of today is that we have recorded 646 confirmed cases. We also have managed successfully 532 cases managed and discharged. And we have 106 active cases still on our treatment, either in the isolation centers or in the home isolation. And unfortunately, we have lost 8 cases. And I want to say and put the records straight that this strange disease has 3 peculiar characteristics that has made it very difficult for mankind. One is that it spreads very fast. 2 is that it's one of the few diseases that can be transmitted at incubation periods and also asymptomatic carriers. And 3 is that it's one of the few diseases also that can reinfect somebody after being exposed to it and suffering it. So these are the things that has made COVID very outstanding, very dangerous. And all has to put our hands on deck to ensure that we overcome this pandemic. With respect to Ebonyi State, I will say that our response has been in 3 phases, and the 4th phase will come post-COVID, because behind every tunnel, there must be light. We are hopeful that one day the solution will come to COVID. So, but for now, the 3 phases has been when the cases were recorded in China, Wuhan city in Hubei province of China, on 31st December 2019. And when it was devastating the places that it has spread to, proactive, hard-working, wonder-working governor, His Excellency Chief Engineer David Umahi, we were chatting one day, he said, this disease is going to be a problem to the whole world, because he's a man that functions as if he sees tomorrow. So, well, we took it seriously, and by 30th January 2020, the WHO declared this disease a disease of public health importance of international concern. And on 11th March, it was declared pandemic. So the thing continued to spread. So within that period, Nigeria has not recorded any case, but we have started doing something. We have put in place a lot of measures to ensure that we don't even have any case. And peradventure we have any case, that we are on top of our game. So he has already put in place a lot of measures in risk communication. We emphasized it so much. We did a public awareness campaign and sensitization in all the nooks and crannies of Ebonyi State. And we started putting infrastructures in place. He started constructing, the isolation centers, both the one in the Unity Square, that's a 50-bed capacity isolation center, the holding center in Feta 2, that is a 50-bed capacity holding center, where somebody suspected can be kept and tested. And if you test positive, you'll be moved to another facility. We also started working on Elumo General Hospital, which is in the suburbs of Abakaliki, our state capital, to be upgraded to a COVID compliance center as an isolation center, which is a 150-bed capacity facility. And also the completion of an ultra-modern virology center complex, which is a 300-bed capacity facility in Feta 2. So, and all these facilities were equipped with all the medical equipments and hospital equipment that can help to manage COVID, including ventilators, dialysis machines, oxygen cylinders, oxygen regulators, oxygen concentrators, and everything, monitors that you can think of to ensure that these facilities can take care of COVID-based patients. Then the second era is when Nigeria recorded the case. We have to change our strategy, because this is a disease that is just like the general population, that no caps, no cap fits all. So there's no system, there's no strategy, there's no approach that can adequately take care of COVID. You have to review your approach, you have to review your strategies often and on. So when Nigeria recorded the case, we started emphasizing border checks and house to house surveillance. And what we do is that at the borders we identified 50 entry points into Ebonyi State, 9 major borders and 41 minor entry points. And we mounted security checks and medical surveillance in those places. And every person of interest, passengers of interest, entering into Ebonyi State, they're intercepted and moved to quarantine centers. And what we do, we monitor them for 14 days. We test them at the onset, and after 14 days, we also test them again. But at the time, WHO and NCDC reviewed the guideline and said, even after that 14th day, you may not test again if the person does not have any symptom. So we're doing that. And initially, we're using our township stadium, the Pangino Oruta International Township Stadium. At a point, the facility was overstretched. And His Excellency, our dear Governor, Chief Engineer David Umahi, in his wisdom, decentralized this quarantine center to 39 quarantine centers of 3 in each local government areas. And we're using 3 development centers in this regard. So we're doing that. Also at the time, because of the pressure, we also started recording community transmission. So we also have to review our system, we have to review our approach, we have to review our strategy. And we now said what the best now is targeted active case search. And what we are doing now is to go house to house, detect people that are sick and test them. The people that are not sick, we also educate them.
Dr. Mezuruke, thank you very much there for your opening salvo. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's now come to our Abuja studios where we have Dr. Saka Audu, Commissioner for Health in Kogi State, as well as Dr. Mohammed Balogun, who was earlier introduced, is a resident advisor of Nigerian Field Epidemiology. Let's begin first here in the studios with Dr. Saka Audu, Honorable Commissioner for Health in Kogi. Doctor, for a long time, Kogi was not just a state of interest, but also a state of curiosity with regard to COVID-19. We had all kinds of stories. At some point, we were told that Kogi had developed an app and that Kogi didn't require NCDC. When NCDC officials came, there was an attempt to forcefully quarantine them. They had to return to base. Some persons have died, and even without an autopsy being performed, they were told that those persons died of natural causes. What is the reality now in Kogi?
Thank you very much. I want to start by correcting the impression that Kogi State declined the involvement of NCDC team. Indeed, we are a state that occupies a very vantage position on the map of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Kogi State is a central passage for all commuters from the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. By virtue of that, we have had our own fair share of disease outbreaks in the past. Even this year, we have had up to 31 cases of Lassa fever. We have had yellow fever in 2017 in Okoleke axis, a disease that was initially captured as an unknown disease. And when we went there, we investigated with our health development partners. We discovered it was yellow fever, and the speed with which we resolved and controlled the epidemic at that time was considered a 21st century approach. So we are a state that has rich history in management of infectious diseases. Before February 27, when Nigeria recorded the first case, we capitalized on the existing Lassa fever structure, and we commenced sensitization then, when other states were still boasting and thinking the disease will not enter Nigeria. So our approach has been that of an indigenous approach that take into consideration the peculiarity of our location, the peculiarity of our people, the peculiarity of our resources, and the peculiarity of our economy. We did not follow the mass, the situation in Nigeria where people were actually importing foreign strategies that were developed for first world countries that could not be implemented in Nigeria. You could all see it. We're dependent on our own protocol. We look at the situation, we design protocol, state-independent guidelines and protocol that was tailored to reflect the peculiarity of our region, of our people, as I've said earlier. So that has helped us significantly. I will come back to issue about NCDC. When we received a letter from the Federal Ministry of Health that a team will be visiting, the letter was directed to His Excellency, the Governor of the state. In his own usual gesture, in his wisdom, he decided to receive the team himself, receiving civil servants. He came down to receive the team. That is how humble His Excellency Governor Yahaya Bello is. As at that time, we were 100% sure that Kogi was clean. As part of our strategies was to stop people intruding from hot zones, of which FCT was considered a hot zone then. And before the arrival of this team, NCDC did declare that they have had several of their staff infected. So His Excellency only requested that if this team could be tested, they said they were going to stay for 2 weeks in Kogi, and they are going to be moving from one local government to the other. So they were requested to at least test themselves or bring evidences that they are clean, or to be subjected to 14 days self-isolation.
Dr. Saka,
but they declined all this. No, I'm just going to the
I understand.
To the genesis of
I would like to pause you here, okay. Presently, because I'm happy you have cleared the air, on the issue of the way the government had to deal with the NCDC staff that was sent to the state, which of course every Nigerian condemned, because these are highly placed professionals, and that the state asking them to come and they get quarantined or get tested before they carry out their legitimate functions, is unbecoming. That has been established, and I'm happy you have said it here. But the good thing is that Kogi has finally accepted that there is COVID-19 and it does exist in the state. So we can be realistic about what is happening on ground. That's the more important. We're going to come back to you, much later.
I really don't know where you got that information.
Well, because it played out. It played out, and you have also spoken, even from Kogi State, before now, on different platforms. We saw you on TV elsewhere when you were talking about this NCDC issue and what have you, and how free Kogi is of coronavirus, even when deaths have been recorded. So let's pause it here, because you have opportunity of speaking again. Right, let's bring in our friend here, Dr. Mohammed Saka Balogu. Balogu, look, you've listened to all our guests, yes. Apart from you, so yeah. You must have gathered one or two important items to talk about.
Sure.
But then, having asked you to do that, then I also request that you talk from epidemiology, background with respect to the biological behavior of this virus. Now we are hearing that it is airborne. And if it's airborne, of course, you know how dangerous that is. So just talk on issues already raised by three of our discussants before we now get into the epidemiology aspect of it.
Yes, so I'd like to re-emphasize what my colleague and friend Dr. Chikwe said about the nature of the outbreak, that it's not something that is going to end next week. We should be prepared for a marathon. It's not a 100-meter dash. It's not a short walk, it's a hike. So we should be prepared for that. So because of that, we can't afford to have what I call pandemic fatigue. We can't see the finish line yet. So we can't afford to have the fatigue, because I can sense that a lot of people are not adhering to those measures that will help us to stop the transmission of COVID-19 in Nigeria. We can't afford to have that at this stage. We need to adhere to all those things. Social distancing, hand washing, otherwise we can't get out of the situation. It's not going to happen very soon. It's going to be here for a very long time if we fail to do the things that will break the chain of transmission. So we have to do a lot more work in terms of raising the awareness of our people, making them appreciate the risk involved. I've told a lot of people that the COVID-19 pandemic is not just a public health emergency. It's also an economic crisis. If you don't deal with it, the economy will be crippled, it can't move. So the earlier we get it out of the way and reboot our economy, the better. And the only way to do that is to adhere to these things. And of course, NCDC, the PTF, and the partners supporting government are trying their best to put in place the things that will help in terms of ramping up the testing capacity, conducting contact tracing, expanding our capacity for isolation and treatment in the hospitals, at home, in the community, and the rest of that. But as individuals, we have a great role to play. Nigeria is not like China, where adherence to a large extent can be coerced. Nigeria is a democracy, so we really have to appeal to our people, make them appreciate the risk so that they can, adhere. That's one thing. The other bit is, he said something about preparedness. One of the things that determine the success of a response to an outbreak is preparedness. You need to have put a lot of things in place. It's a lesson we keep learning over and over again. What I hope this time around, we'll be able to build that lesson into strengthening the system and preparing for future outbreaks. During Ebola, one major lesson we learned was the state of surveillance and healthcare in West Africa. It was a very fragile system that collapsed within just a few weeks of the outbreak. The lesson that was learned is that we have to invest in building the capacity of our people to detect and respond to outbreaks, but also strengthen the system as a whole so that we can better deal with situations like this. So that part is also very important. So as we are responding to this outbreak, those lessons we should start building them into what we are doing. So it's like you're traveling, you are building a boat as you are sailing in it. So we have to make sure those things are there. Otherwise, the outbreak will be over. That sense of urgency is gone, and we'll go back to square one, waiting for the next outbreak to come. And nobody knows how it's going to be. Nobody expected that this outbreak would be like this. So nobody knows how the next one is going to be. It might turn out to be worse than this. And all those things that lead to the emergence of these new viruses are there. We're still doing them. We are destroying the forests. We are intruding into the ecosystem of animals. We're increasing the interface between humans and animals that leads to this interspecies jump. This virus came from animals, like Ebola came from animals, like HIV came from animals. The vast majority of the new diseases that we're having are coming from animals. So most of these things that have led to the emergence of new strains are still there. So we have to pay a lot of attention to those things and be prepared for a future outbreak.
Okay, Dr. Balogun, thank you very much. I'm tempted to return to Dr. Saka Audu. While explaining, you talked about the peculiarities of Kogi State and the peculiarities of the environment, the culture, and therefore the peculiar response that the state had as against what you refer to imported first world models that didn't quite work. Could you let us into these peculiarities?
Thank you very much. If you look at Kogi State has about 4.6 million people. 70 to 80% of our populace are informal workers. Only about 20% are salary earners from local governments, federal government, and the state governments. So if you decide to lock the state to impose lockdown, total lockdown, the hardship will be considerable. We did it. We were forced to, among the first states to impose certain restrictions, and certainly were the first states to relax those restrictions. Haven't confirmed that it was not going to be sustainable. So if you lock down a particular state like Kogi, the people, as I've said earlier, are informal workers. People like me and other government workers will rightfully expect their salary to be running. But these people, who pays them? In countries like Germany and other European countries, even China, foodstuff, certain palliative were delivered at the doorstep of the people. But in our own locality, it is tough. We don't even have the data about our people. So it became very difficult to adopt such strategies. So that is why I said, in a situation like this, we'll look at ourselves and be realistic about the existence of the disease and develop strategies that work in our own environment. We also noticed that it will be difficult for us to reach out to other people, to every household, every family. A situation that led us to acquire toll-free lines for our people to call us, and we're the first states in Nigeria to develop the self-assessment app that you mentioned earlier. I am happy now that even Federal Ministry of Health, the NCDC, and a few more states have adopted the same strategy after initial criticism. So Kogi State has actually...
Which strategy now? Self-testing?
Self-assessment. If you go through the app, you'll be asked a series of questions of which you provide the answer. So that from our own end, we can know your situation and pick you up for assessments. So it's very practical, and we capitalize on the fact that a considerable percentage of our people have access to internet, and it worked. We receive assessment from hundreds of thousands of Nigerians, not only Kogais, but we responded to all of them, despite the fact that some are not our citizens. So we went ahead. What we are doing currently was to move away from the fact that all health institutions could attend to COVID-19 cases. We established Conference Center for Infectious Diseases. So ab initio, with symptoms like cough, fever, and other associated symptoms of COVID-19, you could approach the center. You could also call our helplines for you to be picked up with ambulance services and be conveyed to that center so that other hospitals could be freed to attend to those with common ailments. Okay. We also cooperated with the relevant agencies like NCDC and CDC America, and we established a molecular reference lab, which is currently working. But what we do not understand is the refusal of those who are charged with the responsibility to control this disease to accept data from Kogi State. It's quite disturbing.
It's disturbing.
I also mentioned to you that we have been assigned to have recorded 5 patients. I would like to give you history about those 5 patients in 1 minute.
Okay.
For example, you all knew what transpired when the first 2 cases were declared. I don't need to go over it. The 3rd patient, a woman who had nephrectomy, being evaluated with another renal symptoms, and the patient was sent from FMC Lokoja to a hospital in Abuja for MRI, and the patient was diagnosed to have COVID-19. I'm not saying this is not possible, but what really baffled me was the fact that the woman's son requested that 2 samples be taken and cooperated with the laboratory scientists that took the sample. 2 samples were actually taken. One was labeled in accordance with the patient's data, and the other one as if a patient was coming from another state. It will interest you to know that the woman from Kogi State tested positive, while the other one was negative.
But the same test from the
same woman. Then the 4th and 5th patients, for weeks now, I have personally made calls to directors in Gadwa Laboratory, one of the NCDC controlled laboratory. They have refused to give us, other than names of those patients, the identity of these patients.
All right.
On condition that the patients declined.
Wait, because before we go on break, I would like to bring in Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu, because you have raised a lot of issues against NCDC with the background of what happened in Kogi State. You making Nigerians to believe that there was false information with respect to tests carried out by NCDC with respect to the lady you talked about and other patients some of whom have also died. All right, so Dr. Ihekwazu, please, this is not necessarily a matter of controversy, but it's a matter of clarity. Let us clear the air on these issues, because what happened in Kogi some weeks ago actually brought in unnecessary controversy with respect to COVID-19 and how your agency has been operating within this period. So let us know really what the picture was in Kogi, and let's get out of it once and for all. And before you leave, after answering that question, I'd like you also to look at your own personal view of what has transpired in different states. How would you score the states in terms of performance, in terms of adherence to protocol, in terms of facility, and what have you?
So thank you very much. I think now is not the time to go into the history of what has gone on in Kogi over the past few months. When we're done with the outbreak, we can go back and review and let history and Nigerians judge how we have led this response. Right now, like my brother, the Honorable Commissioner, has said, who I have worked with very closely for many years. We have 5 million citizens, Nigerian citizens, in Kogi State who need access to care and treatment. And I would like to focus our efforts on doing that. We have 36 plus 1 states in Nigeria. By far, almost all the states are seeking our support, and we have been providing that support in extremely diligent ways. To say that there's something peculiar in Kogi that is different from every other state in Nigeria and every other in the world, because this is not a Nigerian outbreak, this is a global pandemic. The test that we're doing in Nigeria and in every other state in Nigeria, it's not a it's the same test done in Brazil, in India, in the US, in the UK, in South Africa, in Ghana. It's exactly the same test. The challenge, the response that we are providing is not a first world response. Nigerian citizens are as susceptible and have the same right to protection as every other citizen in every other country in the world. There's nothing peculiar, my brother, about the states in their delivery of this leadership. And whenever Kogi is ready to accept that support, we will carry out that mandate that we have sworn to carry out. So we remain keen able to support the government of Kogi State in protecting the health of their citizens. That is the reason of the existence of NCDC. It brings no benefit for us that we've not been able to do this optimally, but we are confident that we can still turn the tide. Like I said in the beginning, this is not a marathon. We can't wish this virus away. It is here with us. Whether we accept it today or accept it tomorrow or next week, it doesn't change the fact that we have community transmission going on in Nigeria now that is very difficult to stop with the conventional tools that we have. So I continue to appeal to the Honorable Commissioner to work together with us. Let's leave the political leadership to do what they do. Their role is to lead us. Let us, those given the mandate to lead the health sector, do what we need to do, and we can quickly turn the tide on the state of the outbreak in Nigeria. Testing, like I said, is not the response. It's the eye into the outbreak. If we don't test, we are not able to understand the size and spread, the trends over time, the distribution in local government. There's no way we can understand the outbreak. You know, there was a time on this program, everyone was criticizing Kano for their response. And, you know, we sent the biggest team we've ever sent to any state in Kano. Kano state government invested millions of naira. They rose to the challenge. Today, Kano is testing more than any state in Nigeria. They're not finding as many cases anymore. We're confident of their response. And together, you know, the confidence in the Kano response, if you think about how we were talking about Kano a month ago to how we are talking about Kano today, it's incredible. It shows that we can turn this around in certain states. We can turn this around if we work together across federal and state, across partners, across whatever lines we use to distinguish ourselves. And that is really what I keep offering every state in Nigeria, to work together to protect the health of all Nigerian citizens, irrespective of the state they live in.
All right, Dr. Ehekwezu, thank you very much there for your response. Gentlemen, we're going to have to take a short break. When we return from the break, we'll continue with the conversation.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
She cried. She cried in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry meant nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she is left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their bestiality. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
The number of the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is increasing daily, with many more tests ongoing. The battle of testing, isolating, treating, and attending to the affected persons rests heavily on the shoulders of our health workers, constantly putting their lives on the line and at risk to contain this virus, save and protect the lives of millions of Nigerians. To these health workers, we at the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, on behalf of millions of Nigerians, say a big thank you for all that you have done and are doing. To the security agencies enforcing the lockdown and every other frontliner, we say thank you for putting your lives on the line to save ours. There is no amount of words that can quantify our gratitude. Thank you. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I just would like to come back again to our Abuja studios, this time Dr. Mohammed Balogun. Dr. Mohammed Balogun, well, Dr. Ekwazu has already spoken briefly about Kano, because Kano was a state of interest for us on Good Morning Nigeria. We had a number of dignitaries from Kano, including the Emir of Kano, that's the Sarki Kano, the Deputy Governor, prominent officials, Professor Nasidi, and quite a number of other persons. So what has happened in Kano that the numbers that seem to be climbing at some point suddenly would appear to have fallen? That's one. Then from an epidemiological point of view, virtually the Nigerian economy has reopened. One of the fastest means of community transmission that was always feared, air travel. The protocols that we established are already being breached. We saw what happened in Kano. A big man said, you cannot decontaminate my luggage because I'm a VIP. As if VIPs don't carry the virus or they don't suffer from the virus. Do we face a much graver risk now with the reopening of the economy at the challenge of having to, resuscitate livelihoods?
Yes, so thank you for those questions. To address the first question, I think the index case from Kano was not the first case in the outbreak in Kano. The outbreak had been going on for a long time before the index case, meaning the person that was detected, tested in the lab and confirmed. So, and the kind of people that were dying in Kano around that time actually fit almost 100% the demographics of the kind of people that have a bad outcome with COVID. So those elderly people that were dying in Kano most likely were dying of COVID. So Kano had progressed, it had advanced in its outbreak before we even knew what was happening. So it's possible that the outbreak is on its way out in Kano. It went, it ravaged uncontrolled for a long time, and it's on its way out because people are actually collecting. I myself, for a long time, we've been discussing this and what exactly is happening in Kano. They are testing, they are not finding the cases. They're actually testing, they're collecting samples. Within a few days, they collect thousands of samples, and they're being tested, and you have a low positivity rate. And that's where everybody is hoping to get to at the end of the day, where you test a lot, but you find a few cases, meaning you are getting over the outbreak. So the data, if we are looking at our data, if we allow our data to guide us, to tell us what is happening in Kano, it seems the outbreak in Kano is on its way down. That is what the data is telling us.
That's interesting.
I think that's a very interesting development.
Positive
and other states should emulate this because, as you rightly pointed out, Kingsley, when we had the deputy governor, there was no index case in Kano. And we were suggesting to him that Kano is a very big state. It has a highly populated,
yes,
right? And that he was giving us assurances that look, that nothing is going to happen because, of course, he certainly showed us at that time, that there was not going to be COVID-19 as we are speculating. But a week after that, of course, you know what happened there. The boom all over the place.
Second question.
Yes.
That's on reopening of the economy and the risks that we face.
So it's not rocket science. If you lower your guards, you don't obey the measures, you don't do social distancing, it's going to get worse. There is nothing that is going to happen beyond that. It's going to get worse. It happened all over the world. In many countries, in North America and Europe, where they opened up, they had to quickly close back because of the surge in cases. So we should expect to see an upsurge of cases in Nigeria because we have opened up, except if we apply those rules, social distancing, hand washing, using face masks, and all the rest of the things that we need to do, even with, these kind of, the increased movement of people around the country and the rest of that. So we have to find a way to mitigate. So we are beyond the point of containment. What we are trying to do now is to mitigate, lower the impacts of the outbreak and slow it down as much as possible, so that the healthcare system doesn't get overwhelmed with a high number of people that need attention at the same time.
But what's on ground now presently is the fact that people are not adhering to the protocol. It's as simple as that.
Yes, so that's what we need to do. We need to do a lot of work on risk communication. People need to better appreciate the risk involved. And now that we have a mounting body of evidence telling us that this virus is actually, airborne to an extent, then we have even a greater reason to adhere to those, measures, especially face mask, ventilation, social distancing, and the rest of that.
Is it not possible, Kirian, before we proceed, is it not possible that because there is also now greater information out there as to preventive measures, pharma preventive measures, that patients are saying, look, if I fortify my immune system probably I can contain I can combat this virus if it lands. It may. You go to the pharmacy shops now, you can't find some of the commonest supplements that ordinarily you would just pick from the shelf. When I saw the price of one the other day, I won't mention the name so that Nigerians will not say I'm prescribing. 8,000 for 50 tablets, another one 12,000. I said, you are the ones that will swallow these ones, Yeah. And then you have all kinds of prescriptions, expose yourself to sunlight, have some exercise. So all those ones not happen?
So we don't recommend those things. They are not part of the recommendations that we give. We are looking at those measures, those simple things are easy to observe. Not everybody can afford those things. They're very expensive, and there is no scientific evidence to show that they have any benefit in this situation. But we know that some people, a particular group of people, have the tendency to have a bad outcome in terms of severity of illness and also dying. So we talk about people that have comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, chronic liver disease, chronic kidney disease, cancer, and the rest of that. So NCDC has actually come up with a guideline to protect these people that we call the vulnerable people. It's there on the website, everybody can look at it, and it's just basically to try and isolate those people that are likely to have a bad outcome. So those are the things that are targeted at specific people that can affect the outlook of the outcome at the end of the outbreak at the end of the day, because the vast majority of people are asymptomatic or they are mildly symptomatic. But those people that are likely to have a bad outcome, they are likely to die. We are trying to focus on them, make sure they get access to services in the hospital, make sure we isolate them for the rest of the people that can transmit the disease to them. That's a very important intervention that we're considering.
As a matter of fact, from your explanation, Kingsley, it does seem that we are just starting the journey,
That's right. That's right. It's a marathon.
That's the truth. Just starting the journey of this fight against the coronavirus, indeed.
Until at least we have a reliable vaccine.
Exactly. And well, the issue of vaccine has even been that of controversy for a long time, that we may not even start discussing that now. Because one man has said in the past that it's only when we get a vaccine that this issue will be solved. And he's also talking about more viruses coming up, because because we have corona, it does not stop other viruses from
And I'd like to quickly make a point here. I think one of the great lessons we have learned from this outbreak is we need to build our indigenous or our local capacity to produce pharmaceuticals and biologicals.
Exactly.
We need to be able to. Do you know that we used to produce our yellow fever vaccines? In Lagos, we're producing yellow fever vaccines, rabies vaccines. The buildings are there, abandoned, nothing's happening there anymore.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we need to get that back.
That's a fine point, because
we need to get that back.
The NIPRI Director General has also been on this in terms of our medicine security.
Yes. Now, Dr. Daniel Umezurike, let's come back to you in Enugu there, and let us know how you are ramping up the issue of testing in Ebonyi State. It's so surprising, really, that Ebonyi has to have the number of cases on record at the moment. And we would like you to also let us know extra efforts being made by your government or task force on COVID-19 in Ebonyi State to see how you can curtail the spread of COVID-19 in that state.
In terms of testing, Ebonyi State has done very well, because we're the first state to be activated to confirm COVID-19. And this does not happen by accident. It didn't happen by accident. Ebonyi State has put in place a lot of measures during the era of Lassa fever in 2016, when we constructed and equipped, under His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Ebonyi State, an ultra-modern virology center with all the polymerase chain reaction machine, that is PCR machines, in place. So when the challenge of COVID came up, it was easy for our lab to be activated to confirm COVID-19, and that is what happened. So, so far we have tested over 5,000 samples, and initially we were also observing our neighboring states. And in terms of that, because this is a disease that you cannot manage blindfolded, you have to test and confirm that somebody has COVID-19 before you say that somebody has COVID-19. So that is what we are doing. And Ebonyi State has also done quite a lot in terms of providing palliative and economic stimulus. We have we manage our cases free of charge. The case management, we have a very dedicated team that manage COVID-19 free of charge in Ebonyi State. And as I was explaining before I was paused about our active case search, we want to detect all the cases, both COVID and the non-COVID, that have not presented to the hospital, and bring them to hospital and treat them. Because we discovered that when you emphasize only testing, that sometimes you know, you emphasize more on the asymptomatic carriers that disseminate the disease. But some people are sick and they stay in their houses. So we want to bring them and treat them in the isolation centers. That is what we are doing. And before I hang on, before I pause, I want to commend the effort of my dear governor for his effort, for his wisdom, for his commitment in the fight against COVID-19, and all the stakeholders in Ebonyi State. And also to say that NCDC under Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu has done marvelously well, because I've been in the business of this health services, and it hasn't been like that, because I know right from the time we started having Lassa fever in 2005 in Ebonyi State, we didn't have much intervention. We didn't have much support from the national until he came on board. And with that collaboration, Ebonyi State has done very well. And also the PTF, who has been there for Nigerians in this fight. So I want to say that we urge all Nigerians not to relent, because when you check the trends in other places, you see that the awareness is increasing. But it's not like that in Nigeria. When you emphasize people should wear their face mask, that is with the time they will now start saying that there's no need for the face mask. So we should emphasize all these precautionary measures and adopt them. They are very important. We should know that COVID-19 is real.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Daniel Umezurike, for the information you have given us with regards to coronavirus in Ebonyi State, as well as the role of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of the state. We hope he has recovered fully from the issues that he had. Thank you very much for your comments. Now, let's listen into the views of some Nigerians who've sent in their tweets in the course of this conversation. Festus Akimboyewa, the statewide data published daily by NCDC has shown a significant increase in the spread of COVID-19. States must urgently address insufficient testing and effectively close down indoor operations such as restaurants, religious centers, and entertainment venues.
Law Alpha C, most states have adopted laudable measures to frustrate community transmission, thereby flattening the curve, but the general attitude of the people is reprehensible and discouraging for them. If the virus will not go, let it remain there.
Mutana Farouk, it's high time we learned how to adapt to the situation, because corona may not likely be terminated for now. It is worrisome that many people do not adhere to the precautionary measures. Attitudinal orientation should play a vital role in this respect.
Festus Akimboyewa, only few state governors are doing remarkable work to address community transmission of COVID-19 in their communities. States should pool their resources together to enable them respond effectively to the spread of the virus in our communities.
Now, Ibrahim Modu Aje says many communities have returned to the old normal. Our children that we are trying to protect by closing our schools are vulnerable with high rate of community transmission.
All right, and from Titus Monday, he says it's so pathetic that some people are still doubting the fact that this virus truly exists and are still living lives as usual and not obeying the simple guidelines regarding this pandemic. There is little government can do when people disregard the simple rules to protect them.
Yunusa Idris, I salute the courage and resilience of Governor Rufai of Kaduna and the way he's fighting the pandemic. My advice to stakeholders is more awareness and sensitization.
And from Nandon Wiep, unfortunately, we are not all national as the medical experts and PTF on COVID-19 would want us to, but instead we use mental shortcuts which affect how we perceive most aspects of the virus. The limits to human rationality further exacerbated under strenuous conditions such as fear.
Osman Banu Kantu, community transmission cannot be easily rid of, but rather allow the virus to die a natural death with time. This is because most state governments are concerned with revamping their economy.
Chris Simeon, travelers and people that disregard COVID-19 safety protocols are those who carry the virus and spread it around. Security operatives should be targeting this set of persons.
You have another one from Chris Simeon there, Kieran. It's very interesting. So it's almost 2 weeks now that there's no recorded case in Sokoto. This is the result of advocacy and awareness campaign. That's very good. That's very interesting. Just like we heard from Dr. Mohammed, that of Kano, which is now slowing down. The leader Solomon says participatory community engagement interventions should include accurate information. In Edo State, the massive awareness campaign is yielding good result, even though the community's transmission continues in parts of the state. The efforts of government is commendable in the rural areas. Greeting with knuckle fist is now the in thing. Kinsley. Well, Kiran, just before we go, there's a tweet here from Ibrahim Abdusalam Bello. It says, there isn't any doubt that a state like Kano is now on the relegation list of the COVID-19 league. Says, little or no update comes from the Center of Commerce these days. It is that either they are testing, it's no longer going on, or that everything, of course, is being taken care of. Dr. Balogun was already giving an indication of that as to how they are reading out the numbers and then seeing what's happening. There was massive injection of funds and investment in terms of also facilities. Yes. Dangote and others,
Let's get Dr. Hekwazu take this question. Dr. Hekwazu, this question is on the issue of treatment protocol. Yes, I know it may not be ethical, to disclose the treatment protocol being administered at the moment. But again, some persons who have had COVID-19 came out to say, look, that they were giving malaria drugs, and that's what they took, and they came up fine. I want you to make it clear, as to people are believing that if you have COVID and you get malaria treatment, that you're going to be okay. So how true is that? And then if it's possible for you to let us know what is on ground in terms of what you're applying to treat Nigerians. Is it in uniformity, or is it a situation where each state, you're on your own, whatever you think you can do on treatment, you do?
So thank you, and it's a good place to end. I think the first thing to remember, like we've said very often, that this is a disease for which actually a vast majority of cases don't show any symptoms at all. They still are likely to transmit, especially if they're at the pre-symptomatic state. So you're asymptomatic for 2-3 days, and then you become symptomatic. And then many people stay asymptomatic, and they never have a clinical illness, so they're never ill. So many people, especially younger people, the human body on its own is able to fight off the virus without your even knowing it, and then you recover. In another big proportion of people, they have a mild illness. And when you have a mild fever and cold, flu symptoms, many people generally, unfortunately, treat for malaria without even having a confirmatory test. Then they recover from what might have been COVID-19, and then they conclude that it's that malaria treatment that led to a recovery. The fact is that they would have recovered anyway, with or without treatment, because they had a virus that led to a mild influenza-like illness. The third category, that is actually a small group of people, 5 to 15%, have a severe illness, of which a small proportion ultimately pay the ultimate price. Now, it is for these severe patients that we have the first 2 drugs that have any demonstrated impact on a better outcome. The 2 of them, one is remdesivir, an expensive a drug that was actually discovered tried for Ebola and really didn't show a lot of promise, but has now been shown to reduce the period of hospitalization for those that have COVID-19. But the most interesting impact has been from a drug that we've used for many years, actually, for different other reasons, called dexamethasone. And it has been shown to have improved the clinical outcomes in people with severe disease, so people that require hospitalization and oxygen. So slowly, evidence is emerging. Remember, this virus is 6 months old, and across board, we're learning, and we're learning very quickly. And one thing I hope that will come out of this, just like Shakira said, Dr. Balogun said, is a renewed interest in science. This is not only in vaccine manufacturing, but from university education.
I was wondering, Dr. Ekwazu, we know that you can go on and on telling us this. I was just going to ask you, this is something that has been circulating for a long while. If you can just give us a brief answer in less than 10 seconds. And there are complaints that hotlines of the NDDC are often unattended when persons make calls. How do you respond to that? Very quickly.
That was definitely the case early in the outbreak. It's almost unheard of now. You know, we have improved our call center so much. The challenge right now is that 30% of our calls are hoax calls. People just calling to block the line, for all sorts of reasons. But our lines are...
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're out of time. Dr. Ekwazu, always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria, Director General, NCDC, joining us via Skype from Abuja here. Also with us on this conversation, Daniel Umezurike, doctor, that's Commissioner for Health at Ebonyi State from our Enugu Network Center. In the Abuja studios, Dr. Saka Haruna Audu, Commissioner for Health, Kogi State, and Dr. Mohammed Balogun, Resident Advisor of the Nigerian Field Epidemiology and Laboratory Training Program. Gentlemen, our pleasure having you all on Good Morning Nigeria. It's on that note we end to this edition of the program. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Have a wonderful day.